They said it was just a rumor, a story blown out of proportion on the internet. But weeks later, when the recordings surfaced, when the emails leaked, when the footage was confirmed by insiders, the world finally realized it wasn't rumor, it was real, and it was terrifying. Burkina Faso's young leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, had reportedly sent a private warning to Jamaica, a message that Western media buried, ignored, and silenced. It wasn't a speech meant for applause or diplomacy. It was a message of survival, a revelation about how the same powers that once colonized Africa had now set their eyes on the Caribbean, and Jamaica was their next target. Listen to the end, because once you hear what was hidden, you'll never look at Jamaica the same way again. It all began during a closed-door African-Caribbean summit that took place quietly in Accra, Ghana, 2 months before the leak. Officially, the event was described as a discussion on trade and cultural exchange. But behind the stage, high-level meetings were taking place away from cameras, journalists, and diplomats. According to multiple insiders, Captain Ibrahim Traoré spoke bluntly. No rehearsed lines, no sugarcoating. He looked directly at the Caribbean delegation and said, "The West has a new strategy. They don't conquer with guns anymore. They conquer with debt, with contracts, with media lies. And if we in Africa can see it now, you in the Caribbean must prepare, because they're coming for you next." Sitting quietly at the back of the room that day was a Jamaican economic advisor, representing Kingston. He reportedly took detailed notes, later marked for internal use only. Those notes would be leaked months later, igniting one of the biggest political scandals in modern Jamaican history. Traoré continued, "They will tell you they bring investment. They will tell you it's partnership. But what they really bring is control. They will make your leaders believe they're helping while they write your laws, own your ports, and feed your children imported food." The room fell silent. No one dared interrupt. A diplomat from Barbados tried to deflect, saying, "But Captain, the Caribbean is free. We manage our own affairs." Traoré looked at him for a long moment and replied, "Freedom that depends on loans is not freedom." He then pulled out a single page, a printout of an economic proposal from a Western investment group called BlueStar Global, a company that had been quietly offering development packages to several Caribbean nations, including Jamaica. What the Caribbean officials didn't know was that BlueStar Global had been flagged by African intelligence agencies months earlier. According to the Burkina security brief, the company was a front, a legal disguise for a powerful Western network controlling mining rights, agricultural exports, and military surveillance systems across Africa. On that page, Traoré pointed to one section in red ink. It read, "In exchange for infrastructural development and energy partnerships, the government agrees to permit direct oversight of strategic land zones by international investors." He slammed the paper on the table. "That means foreign control. That means colonialism, this time with pens, not rifles." A few delegates laughed nervously. Others looked away. But one Caribbean official reportedly whispered to another, "That's the same clause we signed last year." When the meeting ended, Jamaican representatives returned home quietly. There was no press statement, no news coverage. The visit was never mentioned again, but 1 month later, something strange began happening. New foreign investors arrived in Jamaica with grand promises: smart cities, eco-villages, digital transformation projects. They said these would bring jobs and tourism. But documents later showed that many of these investors were connected to BlueStar Global, the same company Traoré had warned about. Marsha Williams, the same young activist who once led the Traoré Spirit movement, got wind of it. She started digging. She filed access to information requests, wrote emails, and spoke to insiders who begged her to stop. One anonymous source told her, "You're walking into something bigger than you think. These aren't just businessmen. They're the same ones that wrote the African playbook control through loans." Marsha didn't stop. 2 weeks later, she released a short video online titled "The Deal That Could Sell Jamaica." In it, she said, Ibrahim Traoré warned them. He told them the West uses contracts as weapons, but our government signed one anyway, and we're about to lose our land. The video went viral overnight. Millions watched as she displayed redacted documents linking the Jamaican Ministry of Investment to BlueStar Global. The government dismissed her claims as false and sensational. But then a new file leaked an internal memo from the office of the Prime Minister, stamped top secret urgent communication. It said, "Ensure media cooperation in shaping narrative around Blue Star Initiative. Emphasize modernization and employment benefits. Avoid discussions of foreign ownership." The line, "avoid discussions of foreign ownership," exploded online. Jamaicans flooded social media with outrage. For the first time, many began to question how much of their country was still theirs. Meanwhile, African outlets began reporting the story, but major Western media remained silent. CNN, BBC, Reuters, none of them mentioned it. A Ghanaian journalist tweeted, "The warning was real. Traoré spoke, but the Caribbean didn't listen." Days later, a new recording surfaced, allegedly from the Ghana summit. In it, Traoré's voice could clearly be heard saying, "They won't need to send soldiers to Jamaica. They'll send investors. They'll use your own leaders to sell you out. And when you wake up, you won't even own the sand on your beaches." That final line, "You won't even own the sand on your beaches," went viral across Africa. But in Jamaica, the mainstream stations refused to air it. Instead, they ran stories about international cooperation, economic progress, and global partnerships. But the people had already heard the truth. They had the leaks. They had the audio. And now, a quiet storm was forming, a storm that would soon tear through Jamaica's politics, media, and corridors of power, uncovering who really silenced Traoré's warning and why. When the story broke, Jamaica's government went into emergency mode. The leaked memo had spread too fast to be contained, and now ordinary Jamaicans, taxi drivers, farmers, university students were asking the same question. Why did the government hide this deal? The Prime Minister's office held a midnight meeting. Only 7 people were present, and phones were banned. A senior official reportedly said, "We must control the narrative. If the people start linking this to Africa, especially to that Burkina leader, we're finished." But it was too late. On social media, Ibrahim Traoré's face began appearing beside Jamaican flags, with captions like, "He warned us." Across the island, community radio stations replayed the leaked recording, the one where Traoré said, "They'll send investors, not soldiers." In Kingston, the recording was played so often that even children walking to school could quote the line. Meanwhile, Marsha Williams, the activist who first exposed the deal, disappeared from public view. Her family claimed she went into hiding after receiving multiple threats. An anonymous text message had warned her, "If you continue, you'll vanish like the others who tried." The others referred to whistleblowers who once attempted to reveal corruption inside Jamaica's infrastructure ministry. One of them, a civil engineer, had died in what police called a car accident. But investigative journalists later discovered the brakes on his car had been tampered with. Now Marsha was on the same path, only this time the stakes were higher. Because she wasn't just exposing corruption, she was exposing foreign control. Through encrypted messages, she continued communicating with journalists in Africa, especially from Burkina Faso and Ghana. She sent them one final file before disappearing, a document titled Confidential Memorandum, Strategic Economic Partnership between Jamaica and BlueStar Global. To one wait, the file revealed something explosive. The so-called partnership wasn't just about development or technology. It included a clause granting BlueStar exclusive rights to manage Jamaica's digital ID system, ports, and agricultural exports for 30 years. Buried in the small print was one chilling line. BlueStar reserves the right to subcontract data analysis and logistical management to international security partners. Those security partners, according to African sources, were private Western intelligence firms that had previously operated in Mali, Niger, and even Libya. In other words, Jamaica's data, ports, and even food supply would be monitored by the same networks that destabilized parts of Africa. Traoré's warning was unfolding exactly as he predicted. But in Kingston, the government and its allies denied everything. They claimed the documents were fabricated, and that foreign propaganda was attempting to mislead Jamaicans. To strengthen their defense, Western embassies began offering fact-checking grants to major Jamaican media houses under the banner of fighting misinformation. Ironically, Those grants silenced even more journalists. One by one, media outlets stopped covering the Blue Star story. Talk show hosts received emails from the Broadcasting Commission reminding them to avoid unverified foreign sources. It was censorship, disguised as policy, but the truth kept leaking through cracks, through small YouTube channels, underground newspapers, and African digital platforms. A young Jamaican journalist named Damien Beckford, who worked for a minor online outlet, refused to stay quiet. He released a video titled, "What They Don't Want You to Hear About Blue Star." In it, Damien revealed evidence showing that Jamaica's finance minister secretly visited Switzerland just weeks before signing the Blue Star deal, and that $4.7 million had entered an offshore account connected to one of its relatives. The evidence was shocking, but what came next was worse. The next morning, Damien's apartment was raided. His computers were confiscated, and police said they were investigating cybercrimes. He was later released without charge, but he told friends his life was in danger. He fled to Ghana 2 days later, where he gave an exclusive interview to an African news network. His words echoed across continents. Jamaica is becoming a laboratory for digital control. The West wants to make it a test case before expanding across the Caribbean. The broadcast reached millions. It was translated into French and aired in Burkina Faso, where Captain Traoré reportedly watched it in silence. He later told his communications team, "Tell the Caribbean people, sovereignty is not for sale." Back in Jamaica, the Prime Minister held a televised address. He smiled calmly, denied all accusations, and called the reports foreign interference. He said, "Our development partners are working to make Jamaica a hub of innovation and progress. Any attempt to undermine this collaboration is an attack on national prosperity." But beneath that calm speech, panic was spreading in Parliament. Several ministers feared being exposed next. That same week, a hacker group calling itself Children of Nanny, named after Jamaica's legendary Maroon leader, claimed responsibility for breaching Blue Star's servers. They leaked hundreds of internal emails, including one where a Blue Star executive wrote, "Local officials have been cooperative. Jamaica is on track to full integration. Caribbean expansion will proceed once media control is consolidated." Full integration. Media control. The words ignited fury. Protests erupted in Kingston and Montego Bay. Banners read, "We are not for sale." Traoré warned us. No more chains, not even digital ones. But that was only the beginning. Because within those leaked Blue Star emails, one message mentioned a secret meeting, one that took place not in Jamaica, but in London, involving senior Jamaican officials, Western financiers, and representatives from a powerful intelligence network. And according to that email, the agenda of the meeting was chillingly titled, Jamaica 2035, Controlled Modernization. Part 3 would reveal what was discussed inside that London meeting and why it was never meant to be known by the Jamaican people. They called it a development summit. But the leaked invitation told a different story. On the crisp morning of March 12, 2024, a private jet carrying Jamaican officials landed at London Stansted Airport under heavy secrecy. No press release, no diplomatic schedule, no journalists. Just 4 men in suits, 2 briefcases, and a mission that would decide Jamaica's future without the Jamaican people knowing. The meeting was held in the underground conference hall of the Westbridge Hotel, owned by a British investment consortium linked to BlueStar Global. Officially, it was to finalize economic partnerships for Jamaica's modernization plan. But according to leaked notes later released by the hacker group Children of Nanny, the real agenda had only one title: Jamaica 2035, Controlled Modernization. Inside that hall, representatives from BlueStar Global, 2 British intelligence advisors, and a senior Jamaican minister discussed what they called a managed transition from traditional sovereignty to global integration. In plain English, that meant Jamaica would no longer fully control its ports, digital systems, or energy grids by 2035. One British advisor, identified as Sir Andrew Kensington, reportedly said, "The Caribbean must be aligned with Western digital governance before African-style nationalism spreads." That one sentence, "before African-style nationalism spreads," revealed everything. They were talking about Ibrahim Traoré, because his movement of independence, courage, and anti-imperial unity had begun inspiring youth across the Caribbean. Students in Jamaica, Trinidad, and St. Lucia were wearing shirts with his image and chanting, "We are not poor, we are betrayed," and that frightened the West. So, in London, they decided to act before the Caribbean followed Africa's example. The leaked notes show the Jamaican officials agreed to a new economic framework in exchange for a $1.5 billion loan disguised as green development support. But the clauses hidden in the agreement gave BlueStar the power to supervise Jamaica's digital ID system, control 60% of port logistics and data, gain access to all citizenship databases, and establish an offshore surveillance hub in Kingston, managed by a private firm connected to the UK Ministry of Defence. When one Jamaican advisor hesitated and said, "This sounds like foreign control," a BlueStar representative smiled and replied, "Control is necessary for efficiency. Jamaica needs guidance." Guidance, that word, would later appear 14 times across the internal documents. At the end of the meeting, every Jamaican official received a gold-embossed folder with the BlueStar logo and a non-disclosure agreement marked Top Secret. Penalty for breach international liability. When they flew back to Kingston, no one spoke, not even to their families. But something strange happened the next morning. A cleaner at the Westbridge Hotel found a USB drive under one of the conference tables. Out of curiosity, she plugged it into her phone before handing it to her supervisor. Within minutes, she realized what she had discovered, a full audio recording of the London meeting. She sent it anonymously to a friend who worked for a Pan-African online channel called Voice of the Continent. 2 weeks later, that channel released a 6-minute clip titled, "They Sold Jamaica, the Meeting the Media Won't Show You." The video opened with the voice of a British official saying, "Once integration is complete, Jamaica will be the pilot state for Caribbean resource alignment." Then came the chilling part. A Jamaican minister could be heard replying, "And what about public reaction?" To which the British advisor said, "We control the narrative. The media is already funded." The clip exploded online. Within 48 hours, it was shared more than 10 million times across Africa, the Caribbean, and the diaspora. In Kingston, chaos erupted. Protesters filled the streets chanting, "London can't own Jamaica. No more colonial contracts. Traoré warned us." But Jamaican mainstream stations stayed quiet, pretending the leak didn't exist. Then, something even stranger occurred. The Voice of the Continent channel went offline. Its website vanished, its YouTube account was deleted, and its reporters were unreachable. The message was clear. Someone powerful wanted the world to forget the London tapes. But by then, it was too late. Copies had already spread across private telegram groups, African newsrooms, and Caribbean activists' phones. The truth could not be deleted anymore. In one of the leaked emails following the London meeting, a BlueStar executive wrote to the Jamaican Prime Minister's office, "We suggest accelerating the rollout of Project Horizon to secure narrative dominance before opposition can mobilize." Project Horizon. What was that? It turned out to be a plan to merge Jamaican social media monitoring with Western cybersecurity systems, allowing government and foreign partners to identify disruptive voices online. Those disruptive voices included journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens who mentioned the words BlueStar, London meeting, or Ibrahim Traoré. The Jamaican government announced it as a digital safety initiative, but insiders knew it was something else entirely. A digital surveillance network built to silence the truth. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, President Traoré reportedly received a message from an African intelligence source confirming the London leak. He looked at the printed transcript quietly and said, "They are repeating the same story. Different island, same chains." He then gave a short directive to his foreign affairs team. "Reach out to the Caribbean brothers. They need to know they're not alone." That same night, a mysterious encrypted message was sent from Burkina Faso to a small group of Jamaican activists. The message contained one sentence: "Your fight is our fight. Guard your land." But before the activists could respond, government agents began arresting protest organizers under new cybersecurity laws. The tension reached boiling point, and then something no one expected happened. An anonymous insider from Jamaica's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, calling herself the Blue Dove, contacted Marcia Williams in hiding. She claimed she had documents proving that Blue Star's operations were not just economic, but military. She said the British government and a major American tech company were building an AI surveillance base in Jamaica, disguised as a trade hub, and that this base would serve as a regional eyes and ears project across the Caribbean. If that was true, Jamaica wasn't just being sold, it was being militarized from within. The Blue Dove said she would send proof. But 3 days later, she vanished. Her last message to Marcia read, "If they find me, tell the world Ibrahim Traoré was right. The chains never left. They just changed color." That night, Kingston felt uneasy. The rain fell hard, like the sky itself was warning that something terrible was about to be uncovered. Marcia Williams sat inside a dimly lit apartment, deep in hiding. Her phone buzzed once an encrypted message from the Blue Dove. It read only, "Final proof ready. They can't hide it anymore. Sending file in 10 minutes. But 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then an hour. Nothing came. Marcia checked the connection again. Silence. Then suddenly, a notification appeared, a single video file, no title, just a random string of numbers, 473 Omega 003. She opened it cautiously. The screen flickered to life. The footage was shaky, recorded from a phone hidden inside a government conference room. Around a long table sat several Jamaican officials and 2 foreign men in suits with British accents. The timestamp read February 3rd, 2024, weeks before the London meeting. One of the British men said clearly, "Phase 1 of the Caribbean Data Alignment Program begins here. Jamaica is the cornerstone. Once the base is active, monitoring the entire region becomes manageable." Another voice, Jamaican, replied, "And the AI system, it will operate independently, correct?" The foreign man nodded. "Yes. Once installed, it will collect everything: communications, trade patterns, even biometric data. The base will look like an agricultural logistics hub. Nobody will question it." The video ended abruptly. Marcia's hands trembled. This wasn't just about economics anymore. It was surveillance, a total control system disguised as development. Moments later, a second message from the Blue Dove arrived. It's called Project Sentinel. It's already being built under the name Caribbean Agro-Logistics Center near Clarendon Parish. Don't trust anyone. Even your phone isn't safe. He candidate. Then nothing. Marcia tried to reply, but her messages bounced. Blue Dove was gone. By dawn, she contacted Damien Beckford, the journalist who had fled to Ghana. She sent the video and all the documents. Damien verified them with African cybersecurity experts. Every file was authentic. Every signature matched government records. 3 days later, his outlet published the bombshell story, Project Sentinel, the hidden base in Jamaica. It went viral instantly. Satellite images confirmed massive construction activity near Clarendon, labeled as an eco-logistics site. But zoomed-in photos showed satellite dishes, fenced zones, and strange fiber optic installations. African and Caribbean activists began calling it the New Plantation, a digital fortress built by foreign powers to monitor and control black nations through technology. Within 24 hours, Western embassies denied everything. BlueStar Global called the reports baseless disinformation. But then, an internal U.S. document leaked an email exchange between a defense contractor and a diplomat that said, "Caribbean Sentinel Initiative, progressing smoothly. Jamaica's cooperation ensured. Minimal public resistance." That line, minimal public resistance, lit the fuse. Jamaicans took to the streets in the thousands. Farmers, students, elders, Rastafarians, and church leaders marched together, shouting, "No sentinel on sacred soil. We are not lab rats." Traoré told us this would happen. For the first time in decades, Jamaica was united by fury, but the government responded with force. Armored vehicles rolled into Kingston. Police fired tear gas. Dozens were arrested. Some said foreign security contractors in plain clothes were seen coordinating police movements, giving orders in British accents. The repression shocked the world. African media showed the images nonstop. In Ouagadougou, President Traoré's government released a rare public statement. If Jamaica stands against modern slavery, then all Africa must stand with Jamaica. The message was short, but it shook global politics. African nations began openly discussing a Pan-African Caribbean alliance, free from Western influence. Leaders from Ghana, Mali, and Guinea sent messages of solidarity to Jamaica's people. Social media exploded with the hashtag number Jamaica must rise. But the pressure on Jamaica's leadership intensified. Western investors threatened to pull out. Loans were frozen. A quiet financial war began, interest rates soared overnight, and fuel shortages hit the island. Meanwhile, Marcia received a final encrypted file that appeared to be from Blue Dove. It was labeled Final Key for the People. Inside was a map, a topographic image showing that beneath the Clarendon base, there was an underground structure with multiple fiber lines extending toward the sea. Attached was one note: undersea cables connect Sentinel to servers in London and Virginia. Once active, Jamaica's data, your lives will belong to them. That was the last time anyone ever heard from the Blue Dove. But her sacrifice changed everything. The revelation turned the protests into a revolution of consciousness. Jamaican youth began painting murals of Traoré and Nanny of the Maroons side by side, Africa and Jamaica, reborn as one spirit of resistance. Universities hosted debates titled Digital Colonialism, the New Slavery. Reggae artists released songs demanding liberation from BlueStar and the foreign system. And as the protests grew louder, something unexpected happened. A secret voice within Jamaica's military began leaking information too. Anonymous soldiers sent word that some bases had refused to cooperate with foreign contractors. One officer said, "We joined to defend Jamaica, not to guard foreigners building spy bases." The army began to split. Some stood with the government, others quietly with the people. Then, a single video surfaced online showing soldiers lowering the Blue Star flag at one of the construction sites and raising the Jamaican flag instead. The crowd outside went wild. They sang the national anthem through tears. But this act of defiance triggered an international crisis. The following morning, an emergency Western Security Council was convened in Washington. A British official said grimly, "If we lose Jamaica, the entire Caribbean narrative collapses. Contain it immediately." And within hours, a covert mission began a plan that would shake Jamaica's sovereignty to its core, involving bribes, blackmail, and betrayal at the highest level. Because those who controlled the world's information were not going to let a small island wake up without a fight. The morning after the protest, the sun rose red over Kingston, the kind of red that looked like fire behind the clouds. People said it was a sign that something terrible was about to happen. The foreign embassies were silent, but everyone knew something was moving in the shadows. The streets were filled with soldiers again, and armored trucks surrounded Clarendon. Rumors spread fast. Foreign agents had arrived in the night. No one knew who they were, but eyewitnesses said they didn't look Jamaican, and they didn't speak like Jamaicans either. They were pale, cold, and carried strange equipment marked with the Blue Star symbol. By noon, the protests had turned into full rebellion. Students and market women joined hands with off-duty soldiers and Rastafarians. They waved flags, sang Bob Marley songs, and shouted one word over and over: freedom. But at 1:17 p.m., the island went dark. The power grid failed completely. Internet, phones, and television all gone. It was total silence. Then, hours later, government radio returned with one chilling announcement. National emergency declared. The Prime Minister has signed the Security Cooperation Act with our foreign partners. All unauthorized gatherings are banned. Curfew begins immediately. People stared at their radios in disbelief. The Security Cooperation Act, the same one Blue Star executives had mentioned in the leaked London meeting, was now official law. That night, foreign surveillance drones flew low over Kingston. Residents said they could hear the mechanical hum circling the ghettos like mosquitoes. Those who broke curfew were dragged away. No one knew where they were taken. But inside the darkness, something else was rising, the spirit of the Maroons. Hidden in the hills of Street Elizabeth, old communities that had once fought British colonizers were gathering again. Elders beat drums, saying the ancestors were awake. They spoke of a message sent by Ibrahim Traoré himself, carried secretly through Pan-African networks. The soil that birthed Nani can never be enslaved again. Stand firm. Africa is watching. It spread like wildfire. By morning, hundreds of young Jamaicans marched toward Clarendon, armed only with flags and songs. The soldiers on guard hesitated. Some put down their guns. Others saluted the crowd. Suddenly, the entire base gate was flooded with people, thousands chanting, "No more chains! No more lies!" Inside the compound, foreign contractors panicked. They called for air support. But before help could arrive, the crowd stormed the gates. They moved like a wave, unstoppable, furious, united. Someone climbed the base flagpole and ripped down the Blue Star flag. The crowd screamed as the wind carried it away. And in that moment, a strange light appeared, a blinding flash from the underground section of the base. Some said it was an explosion. Others swore they saw machines melting, computers short-circuiting, as if something spiritual had intervened. When the smoke cleared, the main data tower was gone, completely destroyed. No one could explain how. Government officials tried to blame terrorists, but the people knew the truth. They believed the ancestors and perhaps even the spirit of Africa itself had struck back. Within 48 hours, the foreign engineers evacuated the island. Blue Star released a cold statement. Due to instability, our operations in Jamaica are suspended indefinitely. The Prime Minister held a national address that night. He looked exhausted, his voice trembling as he read from the teleprompter. We regret the events that have transpired. Jamaica remains a partner in global cooperation. The government will restore order, but the people were done listening. They flooded the streets once more, not in anger this time, but in victory. Reggae music blasted from every corner. Farmers danced beside taxi drivers. Elders wept openly. In the hills, the Maroons lit sacred fires and sang, "The chains fall, the soil free, the spirit rise again." Across Africa, news outlets replayed the images. Jamaican flags flying high, Blue Star signs burning, the people reclaiming their land. Commentators said, for the first time in modern history, Jamaica has rejected digital colonization. In Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré spoke at a youth rally and said, "When one black nation stands, others follow." Today, Jamaica showed us that sovereignty is not a speech, it is an act. That statement was banned from Western news. But it didn't matter. Millions shared it online, adding one caption that went viral across continents. The West feared a new revolution, and it began in the Caribbean. But behind the celebration, a dark secret still lingered. Before leaving the island, Blue Star's CEO sent one final encrypted message to an ally in Europe. Phase 1 collapsed, but data backups exist offshore. Plan B begins soon. And so, while Jamaica danced in the streets, the next plot, silent, digital, and deadly, was already being prepared across the ocean. Because the fight wasn't over yet. The island had won a battle, but the war for its freedom was just beginning. The storm did not end with fire or bullets. It ended with silence. A silence that felt like both relief and mourning at once. For days after the destruction of the Clarendon base, Jamaica seemed to breathe again. The skies were blue, the sea calm, and people smiled for the first time in months. The headlines read, "Jamaica free again," but everyone knew the fight was far from over. The Prime Minister went missing from public view for almost 2 weeks. Rumors swirled that he had been flown to London under medical leave. Meanwhile, an acting government council made up of army officers, lawyers, and community leaders began taking control. They declared that all foreign contracts signed in secrecy were null and void. Crowds gathered in Halfway Tree to celebrate. Children waved flags. Women sold food in the streets again. The people had reclaimed their spirit. But one night, a fisherman from Portmore noticed strange lights far out at sea. He took a photo with his phone large cargo ships, with no national flags, sitting silently on the horizon. The next day, the footage went viral. Experts confirmed what everyone feared. Those ships were data vessels, floating command centers used by private intelligence contractors. They were still connected to the same undersea cables mentioned in the Blue Dove's final message. In other words, Jamaica's data, its communication lines, and possibly even its financial systems were still being monitored from offshore. It meant Blue Star had never truly left. By the next morning, international banks mysteriously froze Jamaica's accounts. Credit cards stopped working. The country's online services crashed again. It was digital warfare, invisible, bloodless, but devastating. And then, in a final act of desperation, Jamaica's new Provisional Council made a decision no one expected. They reached out to Burkina Faso. Through secure diplomatic channels, they sent a direct message to President Ibrahim Traoré's office. It was short and powerful. We now understand. They control us through technology, not chains. We ask for guidance. The response came within hours. Traoré didn't send weapons. He didn't send soldiers. He sent engineers, cybersecurity experts, trained in Africa's own defense systems. Within days, African technicians arrived quietly in Kingston. They began rebuilding Jamaica's servers from scratch, cutting off the undersea connections one by one. They created a sovereign network, run on local energy grids, and secured with African-developed encryption. The people called it Project Nyabingi, named after the ancient Rastafarian spirit of resistance. And for the first time in history, Africa was defending Jamaica not with armies, but with knowledge. By the end of the month, the digital war had been won. The ships vanished from the horizon. The internet came back clean, local, and free from foreign interference. On national radio, the Provisional Council made a historic announcement. Jamaica stands as a free digital nation. Our data, our land, our future belong to our people. The crowd outside sang for hours. Drums echoed through the streets. In Montego Bay, old men cried openly. They had fought colonialism once. With machetes, now their grandchildren had fought it with code. The Western media called it a cyber rebellion. But across Africa and the Caribbean, it was called something else, the Second Emancipation. Weeks later, President Traoré addressed a gathering of Pan-African youth. His words were calm, but they carried power. They used to take our gold, then they took our mines, now they want our data. But the people of Jamaica have shown that freedom is not a gift, it is a choice made in courage. The audience erupted. The video went viral, reaching Kingston within hours. Jamaicans painted murals of Traoré alongside Nanny of the Maroons and Marcus Garvey, three faces of one struggle across time and ocean. And deep in the Blue Mountains, Marcia Williams, the woman who started it all, returned from hiding. She lit a single candle, whispering, "For Blue Dove, for the ancestors, for every island still asleep." Then she uploaded her final message to the world. The fight for freedom is not over. Every island, every village, every voice must guard its soul. Because the next colonization will not come with ships or guns, it will come through screens. That video reached millions. Schools played it to students. Musicians sampled her voice into songs. And across the Caribbean, a new movement began. The Digital Liberation Front. Their slogan spread everywhere, printed on walls, buses, and billboards. No more chains, not even invisible ones. And so, the story of Jamaica became the story of every small nation that ever stood against giants. The West had money, power, and technology, but Jamaica had truth, unity, and spirit.